Hello, my name is Robin Yergubian. I'm a counselor at Santa Rosa Junior College, specifically in the Transfer Center, and I'm going to walk you through this particular general education pattern, which is referred to as the IGETC. It stands for Intersegmental General Education Transfer Curriculum. This pattern is also known as option C for short, and in person when we pass this out, it's a pink salmon color, just so you can spot it quickly. Now, the IGETC is appropriate for students who are completing general ed, typically toward a UC and or a CSU, and you can also use it as a way to complete your GE toward an associate's degree. So let me go through each of the areas, starting with Area 1, English Communication. You're going to see 3 areas within Area 1, or sub-areas. English Composition, Area 1A. This can be met using English 1A or ESL 10. A lot of students will come into SRJC with an AP score for this. If you have the appropriate score, you can meet this through English Lang Comp AP or AP English Lit. And then we have Area 1B, which is Critical Thinking, English Composition. This can be met with either Com 9, English 5, or Phil 5. It is important to note that this does have an English 1A equivalent to get into these courses. So English 1A needs to be completed prior to this or with an AP score, clearing that prereq. And then we have Area 1C, which is Communications. Com 1 is only required if you're going to apply to a CSU. So keep in mind, if you're applying to all UCs, you do not need to have a communications course, but the minute you add, and maybe it's last minute, you think, I'm going to add a CSU to my list, you have to have Com 1 to get into that school. It's going to be required for admission. So if you think you might apply to a CSU and you're completing the IGETC, Com 1 is highly recommended, required for admission. But if you're just thinking about it, still recommended, just in case you add it to your list and it becomes required. Now, these courses in the communications area, the name for the discipline changed a couple years ago, so you might already have Speech 9 or Speech 1A. In fall of 2018, the department changed from speech to communications. So if on your transcript from several years back, you have Speech 9 or Speech 1A, those will be used to meet these areas. You don't have to go repeating the course because you don't see it specifically as speech on this sheet. They're still okay. These little boxes over here on the right-hand side help you track your progress through this GE pattern. You can see there's a box for completed. Perhaps you're coming in with an AP score, or you've taken the course here elsewhere as an equivalent. You work with a counselor and our admissions and records evaluation team to determine that. And you put a little check mark saying that's done. When a course is in progress, you can track it here with the middle column. And then if you are missing one of these areas, you know it's something that's going to be planned, you can track it here on the right-hand side. Now, under Area 2, Mathematical Concepts, Quantitative Reasoning, you do need 3 units. So you would pick at least one of the courses listed here. This is transfer level math. It's really important to think about your major here because a lot of times your major is going to dictate which math course you will choose. For example, our psych majors typically take Math 15, or if allowable, given your school list, Psych 9. A lot of our business or econ majors, STEM, will take calculus. So your major might require more math than just the one. Anything in engineering, typically bio, chem, etc., are going to have Math 1A, Math 1B, and more, on and on. But at least the one class, that first level, will meet the general ed portion. Some majors, like English or history, they're not all that particular about, or they're not particular at all about what math class. They just want you to have a math, and that's where you're going to do some research to determine which course is most appropriate, what you'll enjoy the most, since you are given the option of what to select at the transfer level in math. Under Area 3, Arts and Humanities, you need to complete 9 units. You need to have at least 1 art, 1 humanities, and then the third course in this area can come from either. So students will usually, they'll do either 2 arts and a humanities, or 2 humanities and an art. You're going to see that there are lots of options here. A lot of times your major isn't going to dictate what to take, so you're going to need to do a little bit of research. I'll show you how to do that. In our schedule of classes on the JC website, you can go into a course outline to get more information. So you're probably familiar with this, choosing the precise course within, what's offered. And you can see the description is only a few sentences. But over here, this little radio button on the right-hand side under course outline, by selecting that, you can get a lot more information. Look at how much more depth this provides. The content, learning objectives, topics and scope, and really actually, some information about how they'll grade the course. So you can see if this sounds particularly interesting to you, if your major isn't telling you exactly what to take in these areas, and you can narrow in on what to select when you have many options. Under Area 4, this is Social and Behavioral Sciences, you also need 9 units. So that breaks down into typically 3 classes. Now it's really important that you take your 3 classes from at least 2 disciplines. For example, even if you love psychology, look at all the offerings, you cannot take 3 psych classes and complete Area 4. You can take 2 psych classes, because that's 1 discipline, and then the 3rd course to meet Area 4 is in another discipline. That's how you get the 2 disciplines. This is really relevant because your major, again, is going to determine most likely what you'll take in this area. For example, if you're a sociology major, you're going to be taking Soc 1. You might pick up another Soc class, but then that 3rd needs to be outside of Soc in something else. I want to point out something really important in the world of UC admissions. This little plus sign is critical. It means there's some sort of UC unit limitation. I'm going to point out this as an example. So Child 10 has a little plus sign, and Psych 4 has a little plus sign. And in this particular example, that means the UC has deemed these classes similar enough where they're not going to give you units for both. So if you took Child 10 and Psych 4, you're not going to get 6 units. You're only going to get 3 because the UC limits units in this case. It doesn't come up a lot because, as you can see, most classes don't have a little plus sign, but you're going to want to know when they do. And the way to find that out is to go to the Articulation Office page. This is at articulation.sanrosa.edu. And toward the bottom, there's a little section for students and counselors. And you can see in one of the boxes provided UC limitations. And this sheet is going to outline which courses have limitations. So for example, Soc 30 and Psych 34. They're similar enough that the UC is not going to give you units for both. You can only use one course toward units, or the one course will transfer units. So for example, together these are 6 units, but because they're so similar and there's a limit, you're only going to be able to transfer 3 units. It's important to just note this. Just give it a look over when you are researching this sheet, and then don't hesitate to work with a counselor. This is exactly why we, exactly what we help with, so we can help you navigate through this page to avoid UC limitations, or at least be aware of them. Okay, moving over to Area 5. This is Physical and Biological Sciences. You need 7 to 9 units in this area, and the way this breaks down is that you will take 1 physical science course, 1 biological science course, and then you'll need to have at least 1 lab course. Now, the lab can be attached to physical science or biological science, but the lab has to be in relationship to the lecture, meaning if you take an astronomy class to meet physical science and an anthropology class to meet biological science, you need to have a lab attached to either astronomy or anthropology. Now, in this case, you have some options. If you were to take Astronomy 3, you can add this additional detached lab class. You're registering separately in 3L, or you can actually take 12. That would be another option. Or you don't have to take the astronomy lab. You can just do the lecture, and then you'd have to add on a lab to your bioscience. So if you took anthro in this example, you would need to take anthro lab, but you don't need a lab in both areas. Now, many times you'll see the lab is embedded within the class. So Bio 10 is a 4-unit class. It has lecture and lab right in Bio 10. So you don't need to add another lab Bio 10's in there, and you know that because it has a little asterisk attached to the lecture course. Speaking of major, again, your major, if you are in a science, tech, engineering, math-based major, maybe not math so much, but in the sciences and engineering, you'll most likely be told which classes to take as major prep, and a lot of times a lab is embedded within that. So for example, let's see, what should we make you? How about a bio major? We'll keep it simple. So a bio major is most likely going to complete all of this. Well, look at this. You're going to have so much science for your major prep that counts as general ed in 5B, and those classes also have labs. So your labs met all just through major prep. And you're also probably going to be taking chem. So like this is all going to be covered with major prep in my bio major example. But for my non-science majors, you have a little bit more leeway in what you can choose. You just want to make sure at least one course has a lab either added on or embedded within, like Bio 16. Okay, let's take a look at Area 6A. Lots of options here. Now, the UC requires you to show proficiency in a language other than English, and there are many ways to do it. So this is if you are attending a UC. One of the ways is taking the first level of one of the courses listed here. So ASL 1, French 1, German 1. Most of our students actually have completed language in high school. And you do that by taking at least 2 years with a grade of C- or better in the same language from high school. Now your transcript does need to be on file with admissions and records to validate that when you're going to certify your IGETC. And certifying your IGETC means your general ed, lower division general ed is complete for transfer. So when you get to the UC, you're not following that specific campus's general ed or the CSU. You have your general ed at the lower division level met. Another option to satisfy what we call LOTE, that's just a little acronym for that, is by having a 3 or higher on an approved AP score in a language other than English. Have to have that score on file. If you took an SAT 2 subject test, also needs to be on file. If you have a score of 5 or higher on an IB exam. And then here's some other options, and these options that follow, you'll be working directly with the transfer center. So you can call us and we can help walk you through this. But satisfactory completion of an achievement test administered by a community college, university, or some other college. If you took 2 years of formal schooling at the 6th grade level or higher with grades of C or better, where the institution was teaching, the language of instruction was not English. So maybe it was entirely in Spanish. That would meet the LOTE requirement, and same with these that follow. If you don't have any of these met, but you do have proficiency in a language, you can actually go through a process where a faculty member at SRJC evaluates your language level. So if you speak Italian, but you didn't go to school where the language of instruction was Italian, you don't have a transcript, but you just grew up speaking Italian, this is where we would connect you with a faculty member who would assess that. And the way to do that is to go to the Transfer Center webpage and click under Resources and Language Other Than English LOTE. And this is going to tell you how to fill this out. There's a little link here with the form. If you need to go through that testing process with a faculty member, if you don't have any record that proves the language competency. Okay, moving along. Right here under CSU graduation requirement, this is required only if you're going to be going toward a CSU. The CSU requires for graduation, not admission, 1 U.S. history class and 1 government class. If you really think you're going to be going to a CSU and you have room in Area 4, this U.S. history class and the political science class show up in this area right here. So you can effectively take 2 classes in here that meet general ed and eventually will check off those boxes for CSU graduation in these areas. So again, not required, but something you might want to do ahead of time, especially if you have room in Area 4. You need some classes there. Moving over to page 2, just some quick notes on the IGETC. There's a lot to read here, but a couple things I just wanted to point out is that you can complete, for most schools and majors, the vast majority, something called a partial IGETC, which means your IGETC is complete with the exception of 2 classes. So you have it all done but 2 classes, and you can certify it, which means that you would still follow the IGETC upon transfer at that 4-year institution, and you'd finish those 2 classes after transfer, but you know you're still on track for IGETC and following it. One thing to keep in mind is IGETC is not required for admission most of the time. Some select majors do require it at certain schools. One example, a major exception, is UC Berkeley. Any major in the College of Letters and Sciences does require that the IGETC is complete prior to transfer, and a partial IGETC is not accepted for that particular example. You're going to be working with a counselor to determine all of this and make sure that you have what you need to get in. And then there are some extra notes here for each of the UC campuses that you can read through. But I hope that helps as just a general overview as you map out your general ed toward UC and or CSU using the IGETC. Please come into either general counseling for assistance or make an appointment in the Transfer Center to learn more about how you will tackle general ed in your admission plan.